Good morning and welcome to the fifth of 5 sessions in our series on Queer Theology 2.0. Remember that we called it 2.0 because 5 years ago we did Introduction to Queer Theology, and that was a 5-week series as well. And we decided that quite a bit has changed in the landscape of sexual identity and language that we use. We thought, and even in culture and response to what's the changes going on. So we thought it was time to revisit this topic. I hate calling it an issue because it's not an issue. This is about human beings and their lives and their personhood. So rather not say it's an issue. Today, speaking of human beings and persons and their lives, I want to welcome back Tom and May Claire Hetzel. Tom and May Claire have been members for 30 years. You not as long, 28. Yes, it took Tom a little longer to decide if he was going to sign on. But you've been around for 30 years, and we're so grateful. Tom and May Claire spoke 5 years ago about their journey. They're beginning their journey with a child who is trying to understand their own sexual identity, and they are back to talk about what that's been like for 5 years later. Todd Remby has been a member of this church for 12 years, has a family here, John and Sophia and Max. Is Max here too? Did you make him come? Oh, good. We're glad you're here. And Todd will talk about his own journey and his family's journey. So we're so glad to have you all here and your vulnerability, sharing with us your journeys, your lives, and I'm so grateful. On the video, we're going to have a video, an interview, a conversation that I had with Doug Easton. You might know Doug Easton. He runs around and in this, he walks around and counts people and passes out things. He's the head usher, director of Sunday morning manager, and Doug's been in this church since I think he was baptized in this church, so it's been a while. So he has a great story as well, but he couldn't be here today, so we did an interview a couple weeks ago, so it was great. I will welcome Todd Remby, who will start us off this morning. Please join me in thanking these three.
It's working. Great. Before I begin, I want to thank you all for allowing me the chance to share my story. And 5 years ago, I did talk about my journey from a gay perspective in church. Today, I'm going to tell you a story about my coming out. And it's weird. I said I'm going to read you my scripts because for some reason I thought I would become somewhat emotional, and also it's kind of funny. I'm a 6-year-old guy, and you'd think you'd work through all these things, and they just bubble up again. So, all right. So before I begin, I'd like to introduce you to the happy ending of my life. Clover already did this, but my husband, John, daughter Sophia, and son Max, who are over there, and my friend Jean in the audience. She introduced John and me via killer green bean recipe. I tell you, I had no idea, none, when I was a boy or a young man, that I'd be blessed with my family and friends. It's been a good 4 weeks of adult ed, don't you think? My coming out story is much aligned with the themes we've been talking about. Fear, the clobber passages, patriarchy. I was born in 1963 in conservative Montana. It's a beautiful part of the world. Boys were boys, girls were girls, as they say. I know we'd probably not say that now, but that is what it was back then. If you didn't act like a boy, you would be pummeled, taunted, and teased. I acted like a boy. One thing I knew early on, I would have to leave Montana for some accepting pastures when I was old enough. When I was 9, my mom brought me mail that was addressed to me. Strange for a kid to get mail other than on birthdays. Mom goes, "Why are you getting mail from a college?" I was planning my escape at 9 years old. In 1977, I was in the kitchen with Mom and Dad. While Mom cooked, we watched Frank Reynolds on ABC reading the news. The story that caught my attention was about Anita Bryant. Remember her? The former beauty queen, pop singer, orange juice promoter, and activist. Her slogan was, "A day without orange juice is like a day without sunshine." She was leading the Save Our Children campaign in Florida. Save Our Children was trying to repeal an ordinance which prevented employers from firing gays and lesbians for being gay and lesbian. The images captivated me. It opened a window to a world I didn't know. Most importantly, it gave me a name for what I was grappling with. That, of course, was being gay. I was 14 then, but I was aware I was different well before then, maybe as early as 5. I made sure I didn't pay too much attention to the news story because I didn't want my parents to get any ideas about me. Good move on my part. My parents were a bit disgusted, shaking their heads, and then they strangely started talking about Bob, the local florist, and Dan, the interior decorator. For the most part, between 1977 and 1980, life was good. I was a popular kid and student who did well in school, speech and debate, choir, and student government. During this time, my mom was dabbling in the charismatic Jesus movement being exported from California. This movement worked to make Christianity more biblical, while the gifts of the Spirit worked through them, such as speaking in tongues. Everything was Satan this or Satan that. A big shift happened in 1980. I met a young man during a speech and debate tournament. He was beautiful, smart, charismatic. He was wild compared to my upbringing. I was a good boy who did whatever was told. Being the oldest, I was reliable. This boy's influence overwhelmed me. My grades suffered, my chores went undone. I spent several nights at his house. I was really a different person, but not a bad person, just someone experiencing first love. One night, I called folks to tell them I was going to spend the night at this boy's house. They said no, they were coming to get me. Dad picked me up, and we drove home silently, tensely. At home in their bedroom, I was told that I couldn't see this boy anymore, that I needed to get my act put together. Something overtook me, I lost my cool. My mom started yelling that I was possessed by the devil, asking my dad to calm me down. The next thing I knew, I woke up in the hospital psych ward, alone with our neighbor who was a nurse. When Dad and Mom visited for the first time after 2 days, Dad greeted me with a broken arm he broke over my head. I spent 5 days in the Deaconess Hospital talking with a psychiatrist. At dismissal, around a round table, the doctor guaranteed my parents I wasn't gay. I knew then I did my job and would have to be closeted for some time more. 2 years later, I went out of state to school, took the 6-year plan doing so. As soon as I made it to St. Olaf, I was out. I wanted to be my full self. Despite those years of being ominous with AIDS and the stigma that came with being gay, I leaned into the culture, dating, dancing to the Eurythmics, and understanding the gay movement. I led sessions for lower and upperclassmen, which helped them come out. It was a tremendous time. Coming out, however, isn't a one-and-done process. It goes on and on and on. People know I have green eyes by seeing my green eyes. They don't necessarily know that I'm gay when they first meet me. When John or I took one of the kids for a walk in their stroller, everyone would tell us that they were impressed that Dad was caring for a baby while Mom was home resting. Getting on planes, people asked, "Where was Mom?" Working in corporate America early on in conservative St. Louis, I brought a woman to my annual holiday parties. Women who were interested in dating me cornered me more than once in corporate hallways asking what was my problem, what was I hiding? And in my most recent work outside of Montview, customers around the world would ask me about my life, which included being gay. Those were interesting conversations with persons whose religion or country banned same-sex relationships. These encounters really never bothered me, and I found the day-to-day pretty funny. I would say most had shocked looks, but no one said anything hateful. Post-Montana was an exciting time. It was also a time of depression, since only a few years earlier, that time in the bedroom of my parents, and the days in the hospital shattered my confidence. It took a long time to recover. I am sure I haven't fully recovered since I decided to read this story to you rather than giving it extemporaneously. I needed the crutch. In the beginning, I started with my happy ending, introducing you to my family and friend. With luck, in 15 days' time, John and I will celebrate our 36th anniversary. During that time, thank you. During that time, and walking a long road, I reconciled with my parents. And look, I am here with you telling a true story, celebrating queer lives in church. What could be better than that? Thank you.
I'm so glad to be here. I'm so glad to be here with Montview member Doug Easton. Doug is a longtime member of Montview, and you, in fact, really were raised here. This sanctuary is a great place for you to be because this is all you've known your whole life.
This is a second home to me, for sure.
That's so great.
They joined February of 1958. When that month the sanctuary opened.
That's great. So you've seen a lot happen at Montview Church.
Yes, I have.
And Montview has seen some things in your life grow and change.
Yes, it has,
Yeah.
for sure.
Well, Doug, I want to thank you so much for sharing your story right now as part of this series, talking about your own child and Riley's journey in the last couple of years. And so let's just jump in. Can you talk a little bit about what happened around 2 years ago?
Well, we were on our way. I went before Collins picked Riley up, and we were headed to a Rockies game, and Riley was
In college.
In college, just junior year, and was very animated and excited. He said, "I've got some great news, Dad." And I go, "Okay, but I'm gonna wait to tell you after the game, or maybe I'll tell you later, but after the game." I was like, "Okay." So I'm sitting at the game thinking, well, what's this going to be about? Well, Riley had a really tight collection of gay and lesbian friends when he was in high school. And I thought, okay, he's going to tell me he's gay. I've been waiting for this. I've been asking, and no, Dad, I'm a straight person. Like, okay, just get comfortable with it. I thought this was going to be the day. Okay. So, but on the way back on the freeway, we're heading northbound, and he goes, "Well, Dad, 2 months ago, I started hormone replacement therapy.
Wow.
I'm queer.
Okay.
I've been queer since about age 14.
Okay.
One of the things I said was, puberty was just a misfire, but I'm feeling really good on the hormone replacement therapy, and among other things, welcome to puberty 2.0.
I bet.
Yeah, and the first thing I could think to say, which I think maybe 8 of the most important words I've ever said to Riley, is like, "I love you, and I've got your back."
Wow.
And I think that's really made a difference. It just let us walk right into this new situation and go from there. And my first reaction was, dang, 65 and now my life gets interesting.
God is good.
Yeah, but the first question I had for myself was, how did I miss this? And Ry was very gracious about it. He said, Dad, I didn't even know what was going on. I had no idea how to explain it. And it wasn't until Ry's junior year that she moved into an apartment, and her roommate, by grace of God, was transgender. And they started talking about what was going on and how things felt, and it just made total sense to Riley. And
things just came together.
things just came together. Yeah.
Wow. When you said, I love you and I've got your back, that feels almost like a God moment, because I wouldn't think many parents that that's their first response.
Oh, no.
That's a hard thing to hear.
Well, I was thinking later about a friend of mine here at Montview who's a very accomplished doctor, Olympic athlete, just very talented, who told her mother that she was lesbian, and her mom said, "You're an abomination to me."
Oh, wow.
And even though things have healed since, it was just, that must have really hurt in the moment and could have gone in any number of directions. But
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But that was not your experience.
no, not, I just, well, I grew up with, and I have to talk about support from my siblings. We've always had each other's backs,
good.
no matter what. I've had decades of just really good relationship with my brother and sister, and I think that came into play as well.
Did you tell people, like your loved ones, how did you navigate sharing this news? Because this is Riley's story,
Right.
but it's your story too.
Well, Ry did ask me not to share this with anyone.
Okay.
Little did I know at the time that Ry had put up his preferred pronouns on, at that time, their Facebook page as they, them, and their. And in a sense, I was
A
kind of...
little bit of cue.
Yeah, I was kind of like the last kid on the block to find out, because I wasn't on Facebook.
So others saw it on Facebook.
Others saw it on Facebook. And the first people I turned to for support were people I knew here at Montview who were parents of transgender children. So,
And may I ask, were some of those parents people who had shared their stories 5 years ago in our
Yes.
first Queer Theology series?
Yes, yeah.
So you were exposed
right,
to their stories.
I was their story.
Yeah.
And,
And
in
so
fact,
give an example of that, yeah.
well, four days later, I happened to be on church business, dropping off something at Ellen Reith and Craig McGinnis's house. And of course, I'd seen them in the program 5 years ago, and mentioned to Ellen at that time, said, well, I got some news about Riley, and knew that Ellen would understand because they have a daughter who's 10, at that time, about 10 years in the process. And when I told Ellen, she stuck her head in the door and goes, "Craig, get out here." And then the two of them stood on the porch and talked to me for 45 minutes, just give me all sorts of details, and here's what might happen, and ultimately it will work out, and just answered any questions I had. 4 days into it, here they are, 10 years into it. So they've seen my future and
Right.
possibly how it might work out.
Right.
And of course, Tom and May Claire Hetzel, I've talked to them as well, and you're going to hear from them today as well.
Yeah.
And it's been very supportive to hear from them, and just we see each other at church, and it's a hug and a handshake, and just kind of a knowing look that
Sure.
what we're going through is
Yeah,
there's some
as
similarities
parents.
to our lives. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So people being vulnerable about their own stories, you doing this right now, opens up the way for others who might very well be in the same place at a different time with a child.
It does.
Yeah, absolutely. I think many people might be curious, how did you navigate the pronoun usage with Riley? Because that's hard.
I navigated through a lot of grace on Riley's part, and I still don't get it straight, and I may slip up even now.
Sure.
But there was this 18-month or so liminal stage where Ry was doing the therapy, and it wasn't going quickly enough, and Ry seemed to be a little discouraged, and at one point said, "Dad, just call what you see." So I kind of slipped back into that easy he, him, his thing. But then the femininity started to come around with Ry, and so I said, I got to go back to they, them, there, and so it just kind of riding the wave. About 4 months ago, Riley came out with a definitive identify as a trans woman, which just made my life a whole heck of a lot easier.
Is that easier?
I could just go to she, her, hers.
It's clearer for you, yeah.
It's clearer for me now.
Yeah.
It's not that, out there in the middle. It's just,
Yeah.
this is what Riley's attached to now.
Yeah.
Identifies as a transgender woman. It's like, great, let's go with she, her, and hers.
So when you introduce Riley to a new person, how do you introduce her now?
As my daughter.
Okay.
This is my daughter,
Okay.
Riley.
Okay.
We were back in Kansas, Kansas to visit my family there. My oldest granddaughter plays in the K-State band, and afterwards, her roommate came over. We were together, and Avi, my granddaughter, introduced Riley as her aunt, which was first time I'd hear that. And so it's like, yeah, okay, that's fits right in.
Do you find yourself kind of welling up, getting emotional about all this?
Gosh, it's all the time.
Yeah.
All the time. It's I'm so proud of Riley. This is so hard.
Yeah. Say more about that, like the authenticity of her life now.
I just recall high school and those first years of college, and just life was kind of defined by two thuds after high school day. She'd come home and the front door, wham, and then about 40 seconds later, upstairs, wham. That's just how things were handled. Just these isolation. I just get away from it, and I thought it was just social problems. I just was kind of trying to identify my experience with I graduated a semester early from high school. I didn't.
You wanted out.
I wanted out, and I thought this is what's going on, and I just told her, just hang in there,
power through.
Just power through, and college would come and hit that reset button. Well, got to college and hit the reset button, and it wasn't working. Banging on the reset button, it's not working. And it wasn't until Riley's third year when she met her roommate and started talking about what it's like to be trans, that it all started coming together.
So how would you describe Riley now?
Happy, energetic, fun to be with. She was home for the summer. We never have laughed so hard, just over dumb little stuff. And it's the first time Riley'd been home, in 3 years. Oh, this is going to be. But 10 weeks. From my perspective, we had a blast, and I hate to see her go back to school. Like,
So you really see her as come into her own.
I see a lot of life energy that was being burned up, as Paula was saying about, just suppressing something that was as loud as a foghorn in your life, and so much of her life energy was going towards that. But now, it's not. And it's freed up to do some amazing things. She was just kind of flatlining with grades in terms for high school and college. And then about 3 semesters ago, she just shot from here to 4.0 work in computer science and applied mathematics. Next spring, starting grad school with a research assistantship and financially a full ride. It's just, professors fighting over her to do TA work and passing her homework around. I look at her homework and it's like, if I'm holding it right side up, I still can't make any sense out of it. It's just...
It's wonderful to hear that.
Yeah,
So last question. There are people in the congregation who might be going through the same thing with a child or some form of it, or in the future, and they don't even know. As a parent, so what's the word of advice or wisdom that you can give?
Come find me. I'll be happy to talk to you about whatever you'd like to talk about. Lead with your heart. Just lead with love, and it's going to work out.
Okay.
I love you, and I've got your back. If you can do that, it's going to be a lot easier experience for you, and your children.
Oh, it doesn't get better than that. Thank you for sharing.
Sure, glad to do it.
Thank you, Kate. Can you all hear me? Great. Good morning. And Kate, can you get our... Thank you so much. I can tell you one thing, is if you're thinking about having children or you're pregnant, and the question is, what do you do? What advice? So, opening this up, I say gender-neutral names to your kids: Pat, Terry, things like this. So, if they decide, if they find out that they're assigned at birth is not accurate, it's easier.
We spend so much time deciding on their names, and they have different names.
Yeah, there it is. Well, this is our lovely family. I'm Tom Hetzel. I'm actually a third-year elder here, and as Clover mentioned, I've been here 28 years. May Claire brought me in 2 years after she had started. We've been married here. Our kids have been baptized here. And my whole meaningful spiritual journey started when I met May Claire and this church. I am a very attractive, highly privileged, white, cisgender, male, heterosexual. Does anybody understand all that? I mean, the first thing is pretty, the first thing was pretty obvious, right? All right. And May Claire?
I am a cisgender female, and my pronouns are she, her, hers.
When I'm he, him, his, if I forgot that. Yeah. I forgot that. Thanks for spell bump me. And up here right next to me, to my left, in this image, is our youngest. This is River. River is non-binary. River is they, them, theirs. And a brilliant kid. And
then we have Emily, who is a transgender female who uses the pronouns she, her, hers.
And then under my right arm is Tondo. Tondo, I think, is kind of just asexual. I would guess he's cisgender and doesn't show much interest. Yeah. Then we have River's support animal. That's Sadie the cat. Just a good cisgender kitty cat, from what we can tell. Shadow over there next to May Claire, I think he's definitely like pansexual. I mean, he's like omnisexual. He'll anything from a leg to a guitar case. He's all in. He's all in. He's all in. He's all in. You know. The humor is important. The journey is amazing, and we're still in it. So there's not a transition, and it's a journey. And what we want to share with you, who was here 5 years ago and heard May Claire and I present? We're quite different people and quite a different family than we were back then, and really all for the better. What we want to do really quickly is give you a quick Emily update, introduce River. A quick slide on some of the rules of the road. There's been a lot of discussion in these last 4 weeks about the pronouns. There are other things that I think are more pragmatic things that might be more helpful for you out in the community when you get an opportunity to meet somebody who's you're wondering more about and you genuinely want to learn more about. Some good things to be thinking of. And then we're going to finish up with a slide of some resources. Okay?
Yeah.
Kate?
So this is Emily. She came out to us. It was kind of crazy. Doug's story reminded us a little bit of, we had actually been overseas on a work trip to Germany, and Emily picked us up from the airport, and we were very jet-lagged, and Emily had been struggling for a couple of years with panic attacks and different things, and we weren't sure what was going on. So we just, how's counseling going? How are you doing? And Emily goes, I've got something to share with you. We're like, okay, let's wait till we get home, So we get home, and Emily shares, she explains to us how she just doesn't feel right in her body, and basically, we thought she was going to say that she was gay, but it was way more than that, because we had experience with relatives who gay, but we had never even met anybody that we were aware of that was transgender. So huge learning curve. We leaned into it right away, though. We got so much amazing support and just very grateful. Even our pediatrician introduced us to a mom of a kid who was about a year ahead of Emily in the journey, and I can't tell you the value of just gives you the hope like it's going to be okay, and just that peer support is huge. Emily transitioned in the middle of her junior year. Originally, she thought she was going to wait till she went to college, but decided that it was becoming evident that the gender dysphoria was very, very difficult, and it was just impossible. She was Emily at home, and then just her unauthentic self in the community and at school, and started wearing more feminine clothes. It just became a very stressful thing, living two lives. So she basically left her first semester of her junior year as her prior self, and then showed up as Emily in January of
as her authentic self.
Yeah. And the school was amazing. She was at Devlin, which they'd never ever had a student transition at the school. Pretty conservative. We were so blessed. That was the first year they actually had a social emotional counselor who was incredible and just helped us every step of the way, even down to the fact calling me and saying, you know, the yearbook hasn't gone to print yet, let's take another picture of Emily. And just the teachers and everybody really had her back. And so that part went, I mean, we were terrified, but she wasn't. Right?
So we started, we'll hear in our kind of our rules of the road, we were thinking about what Paula was talking about. Definitely concur with Paula that getting counseling, and not just that counselor that you know down the street. You got to find the counselor that has, or the counselors that have experience in this area. You know, you want to make sure that you're giving that person an audience, a professional audience that can give the right questions, to really unpack the whole story and help to shepherd the person towards a transition if that's appropriate. But what you can do is do the puberty blockers. And now puberty blockers basically stop puberty, and it's reversible. Okay, so it's an easy way. Cut two things right away. Leaning in is getting support, recognizing you can't do this alone. Leaning in, I love what Doug was saying. You know, I love you, I got your back. And we said it in so many words as well too with our kids. Puberty blockers, and then we were able. That buys you some time for some ongoing counseling. And so within several months of Emily coming out, we started hormone replacement therapy. This was after counseling and definite support, and we were totally confident this was the direction we'd go. And the absence of those therapies, I think, would have been, quite honestly, potentially deadly.
She did, can I say, she had to have another independent psychological evaluation from a counselor or a psychologist who didn't know her at all as well, just to make sure that it's kind of like the checks and balances. And I think for us, that put us at ease.
Yeah, and that's not a requirement anymore. That was actually a requirement at the time. And that isn't anymore. But I still think it's best practice. I think it's a good thing. Now, you may be fortunate enough to land a therapist that you really, really trust, and you know your child better than anybody, but they're going to throw something at you that's going to really kind of turn things upside down. But that second opinion, is not a bad thing.
So, back to Emily.
Yeah, so really quickly.
So Emily went off started college. It didn't, the first semester she was only there a couple of months, and she was having all kinds of issues. So she came home and had a gap year, which was extremely helpful. she and I attended, and we're going to, at the end, have a link to, it's the Transforming Gender Conference up at CU Boulder. It's every year in usually February, March. And they have amazing guest speakers there. Emily and I went up there, and on the way home, I was asking Emily, so what did you gain from any of the different sessions you attended? And she said, the face blindness. So there was a speaker there who was transgender and autistic, and one of the things she talked about was that she doesn't recognize people's faces, and this opened up a whole new thing for us. So we had Emily tested, and Emily is autistic, and it's interesting to find out that actually quite often you see a lot of transgender people actually have that. And I think, I just look at it as, things are kind of black and white. Like, she couldn't survive in the gray area. But that was a very helpful journey. And then she went back to college the next year and successfully last year graduated from Lewis and Clark with a...
Summa cum laude.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
You can say what it was.
Yeah,
With...
This is another interesting
Yeah.
parallel with Doug. It was in physics and combined math and
computer
a
science.
computer science degree with a focus on Japanese. The kid,
Yeah.
talk about Japanese upside down or upside right. I can't read that
All
either,
of it.
but all of it.
Yeah.
And then she's working as a software's process engineer for my company, and is killing it. They call her the genius at work. So we have 2 transgender people at our office, Emily being one of them, and we got about every walk of life with our 60 or 70 people.
And I'll mention the picture of Tom and Emily was, Emily, even though she has all these sensory issues, loves roller coasters. The scarier and faster and higher, the better. I hate them. So Tom and Emily, after college, went on a roller coaster trip, and Emily doesn't like to touch either, but this was a spontaneous picture, so she's a very interesting kid.
She's not a hugger, you can't touch her, she's very unique in that way. So bottom line is, we really, with Emily, the transgender issue, the transgender element of her story is not a forward element that we deal with. You know what?
You forget about it.
We've totally forgotten about that. And it's interesting, the pronoun things, though, is kind of funny, because when we go on to River, River actually came out to us before...
Do you want the next slide?
Oh, yeah, next slide, please. Yeah. Thank you. River, entirely different kid. They are just so different. But River actually came out to us as gay when she was 13. So she came out as a lesbian at age of 13. No real gender issues at that point. She was very comfortable with that. But that changed over time. And as she grew older, it was just within these last few years that she was starting to express some gender dysphoria. Now, Emily got a lot of attention, right? She needed a lot of attention. So we were thinking, does River need just a lot of attention or what? So we dialed in the same, we leaned into it. You have nothing to lose and everything to gain. In fact, you have quite a bit to lose pushing back on these situations, whether it be with your own family member or whether it's a relationship. You have so much to lose by not leaning into it. You have the possibility of literally losing somebody. Okay, so leaning into these situations is very important, and providing those channels. And with River, they started, see? Huh? They started to have some gender dysphoria as well too, and they were starting to entertain having some changes as well too. But through counseling, they were able to realize that they weren't really comfortable with assigning themselves anywhere in that broad spectrum of gender. Okay, so what would that make? She's decided non-binary.
They've decided.
She's not.
They.
They decided. They decided. Yeah, this is great. We'll talk about that. They decided that they're not fluid, and that they kind of present differently. I mean, River is a beautiful, non-binary person that presents very feminine. So it's very difficult for people with the pronouns. So we've taught and modeled at home that concept of just grace, right? And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. So River now is non-binary, is in a non-binary a relationship with another non-binary person that goes by they, them. And you see the two of them together and they're like those lipstick lesbians. They're beautiful, but they're not. So we asked last night, we were at River, so you're non-binary, your partner's non-binary, what are you as a couple? And River goes, a couple. I said, we're just a couple. I said, that's going to be easy to present. And then they said, do you want me to come tomorrow and do this presentation for you? So that's kind of River up to date now, and River is a studio artist going to school and an actor and just an amazing spirit.
And I'll throw in there as well.
Autism, yeah.
With the whole, because River being an actor and always everything's drama, kept telling us, oh, our computer just died.
It's okay.
Kept telling us they felt that they were autistic. I'm autistic. So finally, Tom and I are like, here's the psychologist's number, go and get tested. And River is so autistic, but in such a different presentation. And so River masks a lot. So if you met River, charming, delightful. I mean, you would never guess it, but extremely autistic. So.
And they'll be charming and everything, and then when they go home, they're in tears and completely knocked out. So, so it was good to know those things as well too. So, if you go ahead to the next slide. What we're going to do is just kind of share some rules of the road really quick, because I want to make sure we leave plenty of time for questions. First thing you've already heard us say: lean into these opportunities, right? Pronouns.
Yeah. So. People sometimes ask, what are your preferred pronouns? It's better to just say, what are your pronouns? So that's a good way.
It's not preferred kind of infers that you have a choice or something. And then, to really honor their identity is, what are your pronouns? Grace and forgiveness. When Emily, a couple of fun stories. River wanted to be River. We wanted to change her name to River. And we said their name to River. And so, okay, we said, okay, we're gonna try this, okay? And I said, well, we'll call you River. And I said that the test will be the next morning. So River comes downstairs and they come into the kitchen, and I looked at River and I went, hey, how's the river flowing today? I was like, this is risky.
Yeah.
And they loved it. They loved it.
But
then we'd be at a dinner table, and I'd screw up like I've been doing incessantly up here, and I would be referring to River, and I wouldn't even get the sh part of the pronoun out, and then Emily would just thrash me verbally about screwing up. So we made a rule. We said, give me a 3-second count. Just give me a 3-second count. Give me an opportunity to correct myself, because usually I do. But if I don't, you can...
Yeah, model with like another sentence like, yes, they this, or, then they... Just use the pronoun in another sentence.
A sentence right away.
Tactfully try to just cajole us.
But Emily would be, yes, but they didn't go after all. Okay, all right, so...
And then
the dead name, you never ask the dead name, okay? Once that name is changed with transgender specifically and especially.
It doesn't have to be legally changed either.
Once they've changed, that's it, and then never ask. And the historical reference, this is one of those things that's part of that loss that Claire and I and so many people have, kind of that grief, that grieving of kind of a loss of what your expectation was of that kid. But part of that is our historical references to both of our kids are now, when Emily was in kindergarten, or when Emily, first time we went trick-or-treating, Emily dressed up as, so that we always refer to Emily now as her and honor her true identity.
Speaking of which reminds me, we didn't say, Emily pretty much knew she was transgender when she was about 4, and she refers back to that I wouldn't let her be Dora the Explorer for Halloween, that I wanted her to be Bob the Builder
You
or
will
something
be
else.
Bob the Builder.
Right. And so actually her essay for her university entrance started off like, I was never fond of Halloween, and then she went into this whole thing about how, so she knew when she was 4.
That essay helped her get a full ride scholarship too, I might say. So, right on. Okay? Never ask a transgender person, have you had surgery? Are you doing hormone replacement? Or don't ask those questions. Don't ask those questions. If that is something to be discussed, that will be up to the transgender person to initiate that. Okay? It's none of your business. It's absolutely none of your business. Interventions.
I think we've kind of
covered counseling is important, puberty blockers, hormone replacement, and then surgical. May Claire orchestrated what is probably, we're getting it certified by the Guinness Book of World Records right now. It's a long process, but it was the fastest transition ever orchestrated. We had a very scary event several weeks after Emily came out to us as transgender that made us realize we have to really do something right away. And so with that said, if you want to go to the next slide, Kate, thank you. Resources, contact us. This is our email address, tmchetzel@gmail.com. Feel free to write that down. Contact us initially by email. May Claire and I are more than happy. May Claire is just an amazing resource. So if you or a family member are working through this and just want to have a cup of coffee, it can be so reassuring. May Claire, why don't you explain these other...
Yeah, these are just some helpful links. The gender spectrum, there's so much information that you can get online, as well as the Human Rights Campaign, the Transforming Gender Conference that I referred to. It's a 2-day conference up at CU Boulder, and so helpful. And yeah, that's about it.
So even if you email us, we'll be happy to we send you a copy of this slide or something so that you could have those on websites and all them too.
And then
So
Let's give
and one more
them
slide.
thanks.
One more slide, okay? Thank you very much. We got a closing
Well, I
slide.
just want to give you time for questions.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So you heard this quote earlier. If you this is something that was said by Octavia Butler, a great quote, but this is a good finishing thing to just kind of reflect on. Clover, I want to turn it back over to you and maybe for some questions.
Thank you. Well, let's give thanks. Bob is the carrier of the microphone. If there are questions that you have of these wonderful people, now is the time to engage. Are there questions?
All right. Who has a transgender
Or Tom will ask
person?
one.
Who has a transgender person in their lives right now? Be it family or friend? Okay, all right. That kind of is kind of when you think about the percentages and whatnot,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Questions, comments? Yeah, Laura?
Can you hear me?
Hello?
My 15-year-old uses they, them pronouns, and one tip they gave me about pronouns that I'd like to pass on to everyone is when someone corrects you on their pronouns, instead of saying sorry, answer thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
Because-
that's good. Yeah.
Right?
Thank you.
They're like vulnerable to you and sharing with you their real pronouns. And so don't apologize. Instead, say thank you and then move
Thank
on.
you.
Don't
That's good.
Yeah, I have a great story. Real quick, I was at the grocery store in Creede, Colorado, and there's this one kid that works the register. I'm quite sure is non-binary, and but I kind of screwed up, and I just did thanks, dude, or I did something that was very male-oriented right then. So what should I have done right then? I'll tell you what I should have done. I'm not quite sure what I did because I didn't do it. And I left, and I felt horrible. And so the next day, when I was back in, within the next couple of days, I had a choice of lines, but I went to their line. And when I got up there and I said, hey, I have a sense that I may have misgendered you a couple of days ago. And if that was the case, I'm sorry. I apologize for that. And then I asked, and what are your pronouns? And they said they, them, theirs. I said, I won't make that mistake again. So.
That's great.
This is a question for anyone, but just curious if you would be able to share a little bit about your faith journey and how that either helped or hindered some of these difficult conversations with children or family members, and maybe even how children, if they feel welcomed by the faith that they grew up in.
I think I know for a fact that Emily and River recognize this church for what it is and know that they're welcome here. And I would say I wish they had more of a faith journey. Theirs may be delayed like mine was. That's what I hope and pray for at this point. So really, it was more our faith journey, I think, and our faith that did in fact help us. When Emily was in the hospital for a period of time, and I was coming over here, and Ian, and I had lots of great moments and some help from this church and counseling. They've always been wide open.
I remember when Emily was in the hospital, Clover was amazing.
Yeah.
When we came and met with
yeah,
Clover right away.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I remember very clearly.
Clover's not bad,
I have the impression that the word grace is a good place to begin to try to wrap all these thoughts up. Can you tell us a little bit about how that might be done?
Yeah, I just wanted to add on to the other question, the previous question first, is so John and I have had a journey. We have gone to everything but the Catholic Church. And the reason for that is that, in our time of coming out, churches were either for or against, and it was just finding the right place to accept us. And so, as I said about 5 years ago, though, I mean, this is by far the place that embraces our family and all that. But we grew up Lutheran. The Lutherans weren't accepting of gay people, and so we moved on to the Episcopal Church. We moved on to lots of different churches. But one thing about my story specifically is more of a spiritual answer, is that when I went through what I explained to you about being in the hospital and all that, I vowed that I would never treat anyone the way I was treated. And so it's the golden rule, for me, is that you all know me, a lot of you know me, and I think I come across as a pretty nice guy. And that's my mantra, that's my philosophy, is treat people the way I want to be treated, and so it's from a spiritual perspective, and then the various, places that John and I have gone to, and we feel good here.
On the question of grace, I think it's been mentioned by all of us as speakers, Doug included, is lean in with grace and providing it and asking for it as well too. Do you add anything?
I would agree.
Yeah.
Thank you all for sharing your stories. Whew. I didn't bring Kleenex either. Todd, can you share with us how you managed to reconcile with your parents?
I can do that. Trying to figure out the simplest way. So I'll take them independently. My parents eventually probably split up, partly because of my coming out. My dad didn't grow up much as in any kind of a religious background, and he was the one who lured me away from going to services by telling me, if you don't go to service, I'll give you some French toast. And so that was his approach, and my mom was very, very religious. And my mom kind of had more of a take, you have to accept what I say or we're going to break up. And so they broke up. So my dad had a more of an artistic bent and a forgiving bent and reaching out to me eventually after they broke up. My mom, I think what happened for reconciling was just living an example of life that we want to do, but she also connected with. When we told her about our kids, we were going to adopt. My mother loves kids. She loves Grant. And that opened the door. Sophia and Max opened the door to her being accepting, wanting to be a part of it. She was breaking up with my dad, and I think she also started feeling like she had alienated a lot of people. So I don't think her religion helped her at all. But her life and what was happening at the time, and we having kids, and my brothers having kids, that brought her into the fold. And John and I forgave her, which was not easy sometimes.
I have to we were living in a 3-generation family. Some of you know May Claire's late mother, Ann Torrance, who was just a most beautiful woman, and we had to live in granny nanny for almost the whole time. That from about age of 4 and 2 probably when she moved in with us. And that, speaking of grace, I mean, we not only had just May Claire and I with this, but we had a grandparent in there. And if anything, Anne modeled, what needed to happen at this point. This was a 76-year-old woman that was able to just open up her heart and support the whole process. So it takes a community, it takes a family.
Is that okay? I think it is kind of a good wrap up of it's more of something I just want to say. First of all of you who have spoken in this whole series, if you haven't gotten to watch it online, this is special. This should go out into the world. It's so well done. So that's really what I want to raise up is the courage of our adult education committee, and I'm feeling emotional, but Clover Beal's vision and her courage to lean into hard things like this it's important and it's special. You've got a special co-pastor, you've got a special committee, and they've done something really special in this series. So thank you all.
Thank you. Thanks. We are really teary today. We're a little emotional. It's been an incredible series, indeed. So luckily we do have it all captured. And many of you over the past weeks have said, may I send this out? We have friends, we have family in Alabama that need to hear this. And that was my kidding, get that? Yeah. Other parts of the country that might need to hear this. So we're so grateful for every session. I won't capture all those speakers, but thank you. And now I'll pivot to next week. In the next 4 weeks, we're doing a series on the Bible, and the Bible, because I love it. We're returning to the scripture, but we're responding to many questions we've had about how did the Bible come to be the Bible? Like, what's its story? So for 4 sessions, we'll do the story of the Scripture. And next week, Dr. Christy Cobb from University of Denver will be with us. She's a New Testament scholar, and she'll help us with the first session called "What Did Jesus Read?" And then Tim Beal will do the next 3 and take us into this digital world and the Bible. So it'll be a great series. Next 4, but I think we came out of the gate for this year really strong. So grateful for you all participating as well. Thank you.